Look around you. Statistically, 1 in 3 people you see is highly anxious about their finances. A new survey reveals that Singaporeans are actually the most stressed out about money in all of Asia. But why are so many of us losing sleep over our wallets? It's the Money Talks podcast with me, Andrea Heng. Welcome. To help us unpack this silent epidemic of financial stress, we are joined by Ashley Thomas, Head of Strategy and Operations at Revolut Singapore. Welcome to Money Talks, Ashley.
Thank you.
So, are you 1 in 3 people highly anxious about your finances? Because I sure am. That makes 2 out of 3 of us, I think.
I'm not saying I don't have financial anxiety. That would be a lie.
Okay. But so what about money that keeps you up at night?
I think overall, when you look at Singapore, right, it is a very strong economy. On the face of it, everything is absolutely growing here. But that's not how you feel day to day. It's not just about, inflation, it's sometimes when you go and buy your groceries, every single week, if you see your expenses increasing, that kind of pinches you.
Yeah.
And for me, when I go for my rental renewal, and when the rent increases, it's definitely a tangible cost on my expenses.
I'm sure you feel it. We all feel it. Okay, so let's go to the survey that was published by Revolut. It highlights that we, Singaporeans, are more financially anxious than our peers in places like, shocker, Japan and India, 2 of the most robust economies in Asia. What is uniquely happening here in Singapore that's making us so stressed about money?
I guess a few factors, in my opinion. One is what we talked about, inflation. In a country like Japan, I think the price changes a bit more slowly. So it's less noticeable for somebody who's living there compared to what you have in Singapore. But at the same time, if you look at Singapore, people are very financially aware. So they are not just thinking about, can I cover my next month's expenses? They also want to plan ahead. There is a culture of planning ahead in this country, which is a good thing, by the way. You are thinking about your home ownership. You are thinking about your retirement. Also, can I go to Japan next year? All that factors come into play, which sometimes causes that anxiety. I would also say sometimes it's also about, there is a bit of a comparison effect, which is highly placed into a society like Singapore.
Right.
So there is a lot of local cultural context and structural context compared to Japan or in India, where Singaporeans could be feeling financially anxious. Not all of that anxiety is bad. Some of them are very well placed. They are actually planning for their future. But of course, it does sometimes have a negative effect.
I'm sure. You said something about this comparison factor. Can you tell me more about that?
Unfortunately, as human beings, we are often prone to compare ourselves with our peers, people who are ahead of us, etc. Right? And with social media coming in, it's gotten a bit more worse.
Yeah.
When you look at financial milestones, sometimes it takes a few years to achieve those financial milestones. But when you're comparing yourself to someone in a different context, they might have achieved that financial milestone faster than you.
Yeah. And you kind of have this feeling that, oh, what did I not do enough of?
Correct.
Yeah.
And, but sometimes we forget, not all of us have the same starting point. Maybe they had a much better financial background, so they could take some risks which you couldn't take, and which is fair. You shouldn't have taken that risk. But sometimes you don't see all that in social media when you're comparing yourself to your peer group, let's say.
Yeah. And also, I think we all have different journeys and we have different benchmarks that we want to achieve, right? Not every goal is the same goal, financial goal throughout, right? Okay, so here's the part that I'm most interested in when it came to the survey. Millennials and Gen Z, they are reporting the highest levels of stress when it comes to money. What's the most common worry here between the 2 generations?
I guess, yes, the survey showed that Gen Z and millennials showed the highest level of financial anxiety. Some of it is because, they are entering to adulthood in a very different time in the world.
Oh, yes.
Compared to their previous generations. So if you look at the previous generations, let's take the boomers, they were probably able to afford buy that first home at a price relatively lower to their income. But what helped them is that with that purchase, the property prices increased over the years, so which means their financial stability improved. And some of them were even able to buy a second home.
Yeah.
Or even a passive investment portfolio, right? Which makes them feel a lot more financially secure. Unfortunately, looking at Gen Zs and millennials, they are entering into a world where your property prices is higher than their income. And that's because the costs have increased in certain areas. And so which makes it harder. So millennials and Gen Zs, they might be doing the right things, but they might feel that, it's harder for me to reach the same goals as my previous generations.
Yeah. Another aspect of comparison that we were talking about, right?
Yeah, and also when you go to those family dinners, it could be very awkward.
You don't have to tell me twice. So here's the thing. I'm struck by what you said earlier, right? They were able to have a pretty good footing at the start, and therefore, they have this financial stability and security as a result. I'm wondering if it's a result of not just generational difference, but the age at which they are.
Yeah, definitely. I think the life stage you are at also you will have different worries. Maybe when you're younger, you are more worried about your financial stability. But when you're maybe older, you're more worried about your health. So yeah, you could have different worries.
Yeah.
And also sometimes financial anxiety is not always directly correlated to your financial stability. It's about how you perceive, how you manage your finances. And maybe as you become older, maybe you have a bit more maturity around, how you manage your finances. You have had life experiences that sort of teaches you along the way.
Yeah.
So I do hope, I'm also optimistic that, as millennials, when we become older, we are less financially anxious.
Is it also because of the adulting that comes with being a millennial, being Gen Z? And I include millennials in this because millennials, a lot of us are marrying later. We're buying our own property at an older age as well. A lot of us are in our late 30s, 40s. Getting that adulting stage of life, right? Having children later also. And then you have the Gen Zs, the older Gen Zs especially, right? Who are about to get married. Some of them are marrying young or in their mid to late 20s. They are also thinking about, okay, what's next? So they have forward-looking anxieties, and then the millennials have current anxieties, but they're the same anxieties all the same. The adulting anxiety, right? Does that have anything to do with their sentiment also?
Potentially, yes, because both parties are looking at maybe higher fixed commitments in their life. So let's example, maybe a millennial has bought a house, so they are looking at a higher mortgage, or maybe they have now a car, or so which is also costing them some sort of a fixed expense in their month. Similarly, Gen Zs probably they have slightly different kind of cost. Maybe it's a wedding cost or maybe a student loan, but they also have some sort of a fixed commitment in their month that is potentially causing the anxiety. So in general, any sort of a fixed commitment that any sort of a debt that you have, it's typical to cause anxiety.
Yeah, but why is it that our parents, when they were our age, didn't have this level of anxiety? I mean, granted, there was no survey to gauge this, but it feels as if they had it easier, or maybe were less stressed by it, or is the answer life was much simpler then? I don't know.
I think if I look at my parents, since we don't have any survey to look at the data, I do think they had anxiety, but their anxiety was probably about different things. Maybe they were anxious about what's happening in the world. They also probably did not have access to the kind of education and employment that Gen Zs and millennials have today. For example, today it's easier to imagine going for a university in the US and doing your undergrad, which potentially was not the case for our parents. So.
Yeah, back then it was prestigious to be able to do that, right? Okay, well, fair enough. Is there such a thing as a healthy level of anxiety? Because surely we need some anxiety to keep us on our toes, make sure we're reaching our financial goals over time. Is there a healthy anxiety to have?
I think so. I believe some amount of anxiety is healthy. So, for me, a healthy financial awareness would be somebody who is very structured, somebody who is aware of their expenses and is very mindful and intentional about their purchases that they make.
Okay.
Unhealthy anxiety would be somebody who's checking their bank balance almost every single day or every single week, worrying about the small purchases that they are making, and also causing themselves to stress and also causing their own family to stress.
Yeah.
For example, I believe two people with the same level of expenses and the same level of income can have different stress levels depending on how they are.
Yeah.
Like imagine a person whom I described earlier, somebody who has very structured, puts away standard amount in the beginning of every month into savings and has a financial tool that sort of manages their budget. They rely on the tool to send them notifications when they are going over budget, but they are not checking their app every day. They are not checking their investment every day. They are generally just going about their life, right? Compared to the other person who is doing their manual accounting of their expenses, second guessing every small purchase, also stressing their family. It's the same income, the same expenses. It's just how you feel, how you manage, and how much control you're in. That makes the difference.
Yeah, I think the person A that you were describing is someone I aspire to be because you get all this anxiety out the door in one day.
Yes.
Which normally is payday, right? You automate. I was given advice, and it's something I've been trying to do this year to be more automated in my bills, my expenses, everything that's in the outflow column, so that I don't have to worry. I know at the end of the day, there will be something left behind in my savings, and I'm done. I'm done for the day, and then I live my life anxiety-free. For the rest of the month. So here's hoping we can all try to be a bit less anxious. Now, we naturally assume that earning more money equals less anxiety. And I think this is very much a Singaporean thing. The higher your income, the less you have to worry about. But the numbers in the data show the opposite. Households earning $10,000 to $15,000 a month actually reported the highest combined anxiety levels than those earning between $1,000 and $3,000. This is very interesting to me. What can you tell me about this finding? What's happening here?
Yeah, at first that data sounds very surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
You would expect higher the income level.
Correct.
You should have less anxiety, but that was not what the data showed. So when we dig deep, it's kind of then becomes obvious. So when somebody who's earning higher income, they might have a higher mortgage now, and they might have a car payment. They might be thinking about higher education expenses for their kids.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a lifestyle creep or lifestyle commitments that happens.
So a bit of a lifestyle premium.
That you're paying for it. That's one. Second is about, it's a bit of a mindset change or an expectations change. When you're at a lower income, you're probably thinking about, can I meet my expenses for next month? That is the goal that you have. But when you're at a higher income, now suddenly you're thinking about, am I saving enough for my retirement? Do I have enough investments? And you are juggling between your multiple savings and investment accounts, which naturally introduces some anxiety in your life. And third would be going back to the comparison effect that we discussed.
Yeah.
When you're at a slightly higher income, your peer group might be at your income or even higher than you. Then suddenly you're comparing with them and you might feel that you're a bit behind and I need to catch up. That also introduces a bit of anxiety.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of an anxiety premium to that as well. You should add that to the list. Okay, so the survey also touches on something you mentioned earlier, social media. It shows that for youths aged 18 to 34, consuming financial content actually makes some of them feel less secure. Why is this exposure to financial content driving so much anxiety, driving so much concern?
The financial content on social media is super interesting, right? It has had positive effect on some people, as the survey said, but you also see, it is having negative effect on Gen Zs and millennials. I grew up in a very, finance world, and for me, when I was growing up as a teenager, getting the financial information was only from a financial newspaper or some, expert reports.
Yeah.
Now you have this information everywhere. I think what social media shows is, how to make that 100K by that age you're 30.
Exactly. It's questions and titles like this that makes you so anxious. Like, oh, am I supposed to hit 100K by 30?
Yeah, and that is something that social media doesn't show, right? The context behind it.
Yeah.
First of all, the person who is making that content might be sharing a personal true story. They could also be trying to sell you their content or their courses or trying to buy certain investment, which you probably don't know. So it's important to understand that context. Second thing, I think what social media content on financial advice is, what we don't realize is the time that it takes to actually achieve your financial goals. So there is a bit of an illusion of time in a wrong way. Social media shows that you can achieve your goals in months, which is not true. In a very normal case, there's a lot of patience, there's a lot of investment over a few years that gets you there.
Yeah.
But somehow in social media, when you watch it, you sort of forget that particular part.
Yeah.
And then you become impatient.
Yeah. And I think it's because of the nature of social media itself. It's very immediate. It's instant. So you think at the time you're consuming this video, oh, I can get it done in like weeks, months if I just do this. But it's not just the formula. I think people miss out the journey that it takes to get there, right?
Yeah, true. The hard work behind it, right? And sometimes also the failures behind it.
Yeah, exactly. So then on that note, how do we as receivers of this information, watchers of these videos, consumers of financial content and advice online, how do we ensure that what we're exposed to is dispensing reliable financial advice and then keeping us on level ground as well?
I think that's the most difficult question to answer. What is a sound advice on social media?
Yeah.
I guess all I would say is be mindful of what you're consuming. Try to really understand what is the motivation behind, this particular advice that you're getting social media. And of course, try to fact check these information against reputed, your financial newspapers, your financial reports. And also sometimes it's good to fact check by testing something out. So sometimes what I do is I put like a $10 to check if this person is as good as what they are saying.
Wow. Okay.
My worst case scenario is I lost $10.
Yep. So no McDonald's meal for you.
Yeah, but of course it doesn't mean that if once it was successful, doesn't mean that it will be successful the next time. But always take everything with a pinch of salt, right? There could be good information, but there is also potentially a lot of bad information out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think verification is very, very important. So one of the tips that's been suggested to manage this anxiety is to track your spending by using app-based insights, real-time notifications. But at the same time, there's this irony, right? Getting the phone notification or getting the notification pop up on your phone adds to the anxiety as well. So where's the line then? I mean, this feels like a bit of a paradox, doesn't it?
Sure. I think it's a bit of a personal journey, and I think one should find a tool which sort of caters to their needs. For example, I can share my personal journey. When I started, I used, let's say, Revolut tool to sort of set up my budget. I also went one level deeper, saying that I should really spend this much in this grocery, in this much in restaurants, this much in travel, etc. Right? Initially, I did set up more notification because I wanted to know if I am exceeding much in advance.
Yeah.
Later on, as you said, right, sometimes it just causes anxiety and it's not really adding me value. Eventually, all I want to make sure is that I'm within the total budget. Whether I exceeded in restaurant category and
So your phone's not ringing every time you buy a coffee.
Exactly.
Or buying expensive lunch.
It didn't really matter, right, fundamentally. So I guess it's a personal journey. It takes a few months, at least for me, it took at least a few months to actually tweak it, to see what works for me.
Okay.
So I would say go about the journey. You have to start somewhere. So start.
Yeah.
It may not be perfect and keep tweaking it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think having that awareness, if you start noticing that you are starting to be a bit more obsessive and stressed about every little notification, dial back. You can always dial back and choose what kind of notifications you can have, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have that flexibility with today's apps.
Yeah, various apps do that. Final question before I let you go. What is one realistic bite-sized step that a financially anxious listener can take home today to feel more secure about their financial situation?
Maybe I'll share from my personal experience. Most of us, we want to have emergency buffers.
Yeah.
And, we start this with big goal that, I want to have an emergency buffer that will cover 6 months of my expenses, which would feel very overwhelming, especially depending on when you just started to work, then I have to save 6 months. Oh my goodness.
Or if you just finished clearing a debt and you feel like, I have to go from the bottom again, right?
Which is true. And that happens to a lot of people, especially for somebody like me who took a big student loan. It was a factor in my life. So what I would suggest is start small. Maybe it can start something practical. For example, your goal could be that I just want to make sure that when my next unexpected expense come, I can cover it. For example, it could be a hospital visit, or it could be a car repair or a house repair. Something unexpected, I want to make sure that, I'm at least not stressed when that particular expense come. Then start saving small amounts every week in an automated fashion and let it go out of your, bank account in your savings spot somewhere. And when that unexpected expense come, man, you can actually use the buffer without feeling any anxiety.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time you will feel in control. You will feel confident about yourself, about what you are doing.
Yeah.
And you start sort of amplifying the journey slowly. As we discussed earlier, it's a matter of years and patience. It's not something that you can correct in one single day.
Yeah. And I like what you said about, that's the moment that you feel you're finally in control. It's also the moment you understand, this is why I'm putting away an emergency fund, and a lot of it will make sense, and you'll feel comfortable. That anxiety goes away.
True.
Hopefully.
And that's the dream.
That's the dream. That's everybody's dream. Ashley, you've been a delight to talk to about this. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me here.
And thank you, our Money Talks community, for tuning in as always. We now want to leave you with a question. What's the one thing about money, your money, that keeps you up at night? I have more than one. I don't think I can name one, but I'll tell you if I see comments from wherever you are listening or watching this from. I would love to interact with you on that platform. You can also email us directly, cnapodcasts@mediacorp.com.sg. My name is Andrea Heng. This has been the Money Talks Podcast.